Hello everyone, my name is Mandi and today we are going to be doing a countdown to the release date of Essence, my young adult novel, and we are 6 days away until it becomes available to buy on Amazon and all ebooks. So I thought we'd start off the first day by doing a shelf tour because you guys see this shelf all the time, but you don't normally see that shelf, and that shelf has just as many books. Now, my bookshelf I kind of like as a disorganized chaos. I like to have them, arranged differently, and sometimes I like to have the covers displayed. So you guys will get to see that. Most of my books on my bookshelf have been read, and if they haven't been read, it kind of makes me cringe because I like to have all the books on my bookshelf having been read. I just reorganized my bookshelf, and before I had it organized by genres, so all similar genres are the same, and I still kind of have it that way, but I also organize it by author, so we'll go do that now. Okay, so this is my nonfiction shelf. It's not too many things, but I'll start off. As you can see, I have knickknacks everywhere. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, which was actually a really good book, and it's a good recommendation for everyone. And then I have Wreck This Journal, which I haven't really gotten a chance to do, but I'm sure you've seen it everywhere. I have the 2011 Writers Market book, which my aunt gave me, and I literally went through, read all of it, and then highlighted all the agents. And then I have Making the Perfect Pitch by Catherine Sands, and it's another book. And then I have The Writer's Digest Guide to Query Letters, written by Wendy Burt Thomas, and she's actually an author who I talk to all the time, and you'll actually find her name in the acknowledgement section of my book. And we have Getting Known Before the Book Deal by Christina Katz, I believe that's how you say her name. Writing the Breakout Novel, Insider's Advice for Taking Your Fiction to the Next Level by Donald Mass. And that was actually a really good book. It makes you see why people like a book for certain reasons. And here's one of my favorite nonfiction, Self-Printing, The Sane Person's Guide to Self-Publishing by Catherine Ryan Howard. And this is what taught me everything about self-publishing, and hopefully I'll be putting it to good use. Now, this book I haven't read just because by the time I got to this step in the process, I had already finished it, so I figured I didn't need it. Along with this book, I also didn't end up needing this because I just did it on my own, because this book right here summed it up entirely. And here's another one of my favorites, Stephen King on writing, and it's his Memoir of the Craft. And it's all about his writing, and it's really helpful. And pretty much all these nonfiction books you see, I did take notes in the margins and such. And then we have Help for Writers by Roy Peter Clark, and I never finished reading this, but it's really cool because it's more like a whole bunch of blog entries, and it's short little chapters, so it's easy to get through. And then we have Platform, Get Noticed in a Noisy World by Michael Hyatt, and I actually got to meet him, not personally, but I went to his workshop in Washington, D.C. because I was invited by another author, and while I was there, I bought his book. And then here we have Self-Publishing Books 101 by Shirley Hitz, and it's a really short book, and I wouldn't really recommend it just because it wasn't that helpful to me. Unless you have no understanding of self-publishing whatsoever, then I would recommend getting this book just so you can get a general idea. But otherwise, if you kind of understand how it works, I would just move straight to this book. And now we have Bird by Bird by Anne Lermont. I hope that's how you say it. Yeah, I'll be butchering a lot of author names today. And then I have On Writing Well by William Zimzer. And I bought this on accident because I thought it was fiction, but it's actually applied to nonfiction, and I didn't know that. And then we have a 17 magazine little tips book. I thought this was going to be gigantic. They had a huge close-up of it on Amazon, and then I got it in the mail, and it was pocket-sized. So let's move on to the next shelf. This is mostly Stephanie Meyer, and then just another displaced book. But these are all the special edition. I never bought the Breaking Dawn one, but I actually bought these because I was going to a Twilight convention and I needed to get something to have autographed. But then I I ended up just buying pictures and getting those autographed by the actors instead. I guess you could say a cool thing about these books is that, one, they are fabric, but then they also have Stephenie Meyer's autograph, but it's a printed autograph, so it's not technically an autograph, so I don't even know why they bothered putting it in there. So then we have the paperback versions of those 3 books, along with the hardcover of Breaking Dawn, the second short life of Bree Tanner, and then the graphic novel of Twilight Part 1, and then we have the official illustrated guide, because that's just how much of a nerd I was at the time, and I actually went to read that from start to beginning, but I just never finished it. And then another one of my favorites, The Host by Stephenie Meyer, and I love this book. And then over here we have Beautiful Disaster by Jamie McCurr, and it is autographed, and here it is. And moving on to the next shelf, but over here we have Fallen 2. I don't have the first Fallen book. I just found this for, I believe, $4 at a store, and I just bought it for the sake of buying it, and I just haven't bothered to buy the first book. And here we have Clarity by King Harrington. As you can see, it is autographed. I found it in a local bookstore because she is actually a somewhat local author. And I also have her Dead and Buried. And this one, I actually did get to meet her at the bookstore, and she wrote, "To Mandi, welcome to the murder house." And then we have They Never Came Back. This was a book I read a long time ago that I bought at a book fair. And here's another really good book. It's Sight by Andrea Maria Veredos, and it's also autographed. That's the good thing about one of the stores I go to. She seems to always have a few autographed copies of books. And then we have Die For Me by Amy Plum, and I really want to read the rest of the series, but I just need to get through a whole bunch of books that I need to read. And then we have Fairy Tales and Nightmares, and this is where you get to see just how much I fall for book covers. I bought this because it was really, you know, just pretty, and I don't have any other books by Melissa Marr, and apparently you need to have read the Wicked Lovely series to really get a lot of these short stories. And then we have the Immortal series by Alison Noel. We have Evermore, Blue Moon, Shadowland, Dark Flame, Night Star, and Everlasting. And of course we have Miss Peregrine's Home for Particular Children, and I feel like everybody has read this. I started reading it, but I was in a reading slump and I never finished. But it's a really cool book, and I really want to finish reading it someday, which hopefully will be soon. This is another example of a book that I did not do any research on and just bought it because of the pretty cover, and I kind of paid for that. And here's a book that I haven't read yet. It is A Northern Light by Jennifer Donnelly. It's supposed to be really good, and obviously it won a prize, so that must mean something. Here we have the story of Edgar Sawtelle. I read this for summer reading, thought I wasn't gonna love it because it's kind of a thick book and the print was small, but I ended up falling in love with the story. And here we have The Book Thief. I haven't read this yet. I only have it because my brother owned it and he moved out, and I found this in his room and I moved into his room, and I kept the book because I heard that's supposed to be really good. And here we have all these books. I'll just get them out for you. So here we have The Replacement, and it's a really cool cover, and it's really shiny, so that's always cool. And then we have Firelight by Sophie Jordan. I bought this book, wasn't really sure if I was going to like it or not, and was really surprised that I kind of did fall in love with the story. And here we have one that I just started and finished yesterday. It's The Body Finder, and I am completely obsessed with this because recently I've been watching the ID Network, and if you don't know what that is all about murder stories, and that's pretty much exactly what this is, but in a young adult novel, and it's not creepy or scary really, but it's really cool, so I was kind of obsessed with that for a while. And here we have Beautiful Creatures. I cringe at this because I was only able to find the movie cover, and I wanted the actual cover, but I went to the bookstore desperate to read this before the movie came out, and this was the only copy they had, so I bought it in both paperback version and with the movie cover, and then I didn't even get to see it in theaters before it came out. And here we have Harkin by Caleb Nation. He is a fellow YouTuber. I started reading this, and then I just never finished because, once again, I was in a reading slump. So I'll have to get to that again someday. Next up, we have Entwined by Heather Dixon, and Once again, I fall guilty of buying a book just because of the cover, not reading the back cover because, you know, what's wrong with the surprise? And I'm not one to be into fairy tales and princesses and all that, so this wasn't my most favorite book, but come on, that cover is gorgeous. And now we have Star-Crossed by Josephine Angeli, and I can't wait to get to the rest of this series also. And finally, we have Abandoned by Meg Cabot, and I believe this is the only book I have by her, and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to finish reading the rest of the series or not. We'll just have to wait and see. Finally, we have the last bookshelf of this bookshelf, and first up, we have the Bronte Sisters. It is a copy of Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, and I actually bought this because I wanted a book that had bigger font because I originally bought Wuthering Heights, wanted to really read it, but I just could not stand that tiny font. And then I bought this thinking, oh, it's a huge book. The font's going to be a lot bigger, right? But it's kind of the same size, so I don't really know what I'm going to do with that. And now we have Rebecca, which was a book I was supposed to read for summer reading, but I read the first chapter and just could not get into it. So that's actually the reason why I read the story of Edgar Sawtelle instead, because I just couldn't get into this book. I honestly don't really know what this book is about. I believe it's a collection of poetry. It's just a book that someone gave to me and they said, you need to read this, and I just never got to it. And here's another self-published book we have, By Sword, by Right, by Scott Appleton. It is also autographed. And here we have Night by Eli Wiesel, a really amazing book about the Holocaust. And along with this, which is also about the Holocaust, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas by John Braun. I believe that's how you say it. Now we have Andrew Clement's Things Hoped For. This was a summer reading way back in the day, and I also read Things Not Seen, and I loved both of these, and I maybe someday will buy another copy of Things Not Seen just because I did love this book so much. And here we have Shift, and this is a book I bought for $4 at a store, and I just kind of shredded it to pieces when I was reading it, thinking of how I was going to review it, because it's just not the best book I've ever seen. And here's another favorite, The Giver by Lowry, and I just love this book. It's going to be a movie soon, and I cannot wait to see what they do with this, because it's an amazing book. And then we have Gathering Blue, which is a companion novel to The Giver. And I know there's another book. I can't remember what it's called. I think it might be called The Boy or something like that, but I need to read that also. And we have Skellig by David Almond, another summer reading book that was actually really good, and I was really surprised by how much I did like it. And here's a torn up book. This was one of the first books that I actually really loved. It's A Doggone Kitty, and it's by Bill Wallace, and I obviously need to get a new copy of it because it's torn to shreds. And over here we have a giant shell, and then next to my giant shell we have all the copies of my manuscript, which is quite a lot. Alright, so on this shelf we have the Mortal Instruments series, and I've only read up to the City of Fallen Angels, but soon I'll be getting to the City of Lost Souls, and then hopefully we'll get to the last book when it finally comes out. And over here we have Unwind by Neil Schusterman, and Neil Schusterman might actually be coming to my school because my entire school was required to read this book, including the staff members, and I'm extremely happy of that because, as you can see, I also have his Skinjacker trilogy with Everlost, Everwild, and Everfound. Everlost I had to read for summer reading one year, and I loved it, and then I found out it was a trilogy, so I just had to get on top of that. And then over here we have the copies of my book. We have the most recent one. This is the final edits. And then this right here, this is the first copy that was ever printed, as you can see, because it's also the crappiest. And then you can see as we went along, it got better and better. And now we have one of my favorite authors. We have Lauren Kate. Her first novel was The Betrayal of Natalie Hargrove, and the cover is just gorgeous. This isn't the original cover, but it's beautiful just the same. But I discovered her through her Fallen series, and this is my favorite series of all time. We have Fallen, and then we have Torment, and then we have Passion and Rapture, which is the best finale to a series I have ever seen. And I was actually supposed to receive a signed copy of this book because I won a contest, but that just hasn't happened yet, and I'm still waiting on that. And then we have a companion short story book, fallen in love. It's a few short stories of the characters. And underneath that we have Unearthly, which is another angel book that I just love, and I can't wait to get to the rest of the series. And here we have more angel books, complete with Hush Hush, Crescendo, Silence, and Finale. Up next we have a box set, and that is Shiver, Linger, and Forever. So over here we have The Dark Divine, The Lost Saint, and finally The Savage Grace, all by Brie Despain. And I was lucky enough to order a signed copy that I was able to get personalized, and I love that because this is one of my favorite series also. And then here's my most recent discovery, Invisibility. I just read it and I found it at my bookstore, and it was signed, so I just couldn't walk away without buying it. Other books by Andrea Kramer is Nightshade, Wolfsbane, and Blood Rose. And as you can see, I have the original cover for Nightshade, but sadly they switched the covers, so now they don't match anymore. And then over here, the rest of this is mostly dystopian. We have Even Adam, What's Left of Me, Wither, which I need to buy the rest of the series, Cruel, which hopefully the rest of the series comes out soon because that was also a really good book. We have The Forest of Hands and Teeth, The Dead Tossed Wave, and The Dark and Hollow Places, which I've actually done a book review for, but hopefully you recognize that book cover. But they actually changed the book cover once again because they just enjoy teasing us. And now we have The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay in their glory. And then over here we have the Match Trilogy by Ali Klondike. And on my last bookshelf, it's mostly like really sad or serious books, but I'll go through them. We have Willow, 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher, and this was actually another summer reading, another really great book to read. And then we have If I Stay by Gail Forman, and also the next book in that series, Where She Went. Another all-time favorite book is Winter Girls by Lowry House Anderson, and this is just a book that's really close to me, and it meant a lot to read this book. And because I just love that book so much, I went for this book, Speak, that is also by her. But I didn't end up liking it as much as I hoped I would. I had already seen the movie, so I already knew the entire storyline, and that probably ruined a lot of it for me. But another favorite author of mine is Lisa Genova. We have Left Neglected and Still Alice, and these are amazing books. Still Alice is about a woman who has Alzheimer's, and my grandma has Alzheimer's, so that book meant a lot to me. So I got her other book, Left Neglected, and she has another book, Loving Anthony, that I need to read because I just love her writing. And then we have Such a Pretty Girl, and it's a little book, so it was a quick read. And lastly, we have Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver. This was an amazing book. I was surprised by how much I loved it, and that just means I'll have to read more of her books. This book right here left me speechless. It's by David Lothian, and if you haven't read it yet, you need to. And we have The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, and we have Flowers for Algernon by Danielle Keyes, and I actually read an excerpt of this in a literature book that I had in junior high, and I ended up really liking it, but my teacher told me it was an adult book, and that it's kind of something that we should wait to read if we want to read more of. So I waited, and recently this year I read the entire book, and it was really good. And it's about a man who is mentally retarded, but then he gets a surgery, but he gets so smart that he's smarter than everyone else, and it's just really interesting. And we have another summer reading, My Sister's Keeper, another really great book. And finally, last but not least, we have A Child Called It and The Lost Boy by Dave Pilzer, and this is a really hard book to read. It's one of the intense books, especially A Child Called It. I haven't read the last book in the series yet, but I plan to someday. I am sorry if that was really long, but as you can see, I have quite a few books. I've read almost all of them, and if I didn't read them, I believe I told you if I haven't read them yet. I enjoy being surrounded by books, and I don't own an e-reader because of that. I just like having the physical copy. But I hope you guys all enjoyed this bookshelf tour, and if you have your own bookshelf tour, you can actually leave it as a video response to this one. So don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe because my book Essence will be coming out in 6 days.